What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast in the studio. I am one half of the pod cult tonight. I'm just waiting for my buddy Kelly to get on. I just want to thank everybody for all the continued love and support as always. This Sunday on my podcast, the One Fun Guy podcast, I have Athena coming on. We are going to talk music, concerts, her new gig that she's got going on. It's going to be a fun show. She's super talented, and she's got a lot of information coming up. She's been in and around the rock and heavy metal world for a while, and now she's starting a new adventure, and we're going to talk about it on my podcast. So how awesome is that? So Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will have my guest Athena. That's going to be awesome. I'm just going to share this out real quick, guys, and then I'm going to wait for Kelly to hop on. We are going to talk about hard rock and heavy metal music, guys. So if you are into that kind of thing, please sit tight. We got a good show coming up. I'm just getting on to get the party started. As soon as I do that, I will get Kelly on and we will go live. We do a weekly podcast. We didn't do one last Thursday. He was at a concert. I had a meeting. So we just said, well, we'll just wait and we'll do it this week. So that's what we're doing. So like I said, guys, we do a weekly podcast. It's awesome. It's called The Pod Cult. I do a podcast called the One Fun Guy podcast. So if you haven't seen either one of us, hang tight because it's going to be a good, fun show tonight, guys. We are going to have a good discussion, or we are going to have a good discussion about everything that's going on in the world of hard rock and heavy metal, and our daily lives. So we kind of talk about everything. I'm going to get Kelly on. I'm going to share the show out. He will be joining me in a few seconds. I just want to get this to a few people that I can and kind of go from there. I'm just trying to share it out with everybody that's on. And everybody that's been a part of this since the very beginning. We love and appreciate you guys for all the continued support. It is awesome. We can't thank you enough. We couldn't do this without you. We love and thank each and every one of you for all the continued love and support. And we are super happy to be doing this. Beth, what's up? Long time no see. So yeah, we're just kind of hanging out. We're going to be doing our show tonight, guys. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be really cool. And then we'll kind of just go from there. So with that being said, if you haven't seen us before, welcome. This is the Pod Cult. I am One Fun Guy podcast. Kelly is Kelly Arzenik. We do this together once a week, and we just kind of chit-chat about music and what we got going on. So that's pretty much it, guys. Nothing too out of the ordinary or too crazy. I'm going to slide this over real quick, guys. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get myself situated here. Every time I hit the thing, the move. So, Paige, what's going on? How you doing? If you guys follow us, we'll follow you back. Say hi, introduce yourselves. If you do like music, this is going to be a good one for you. Like I said, guys, if you follow me, I'll follow you back. It's a pretty easy concept. What's going on, Diane? We're going to be up and on for a while, so welcome, guys. Say hi, join us, do all the stuff, everything you got going on. We appreciate it. If you're new to us, join us, say hi. If you're not new and you're an OG, say what's up, jump in the conversation, guys. It's going to be fun tonight. I just shared this out with pretty much everybody. I'm waiting for Kelly to hop on. I sent him the link, so when he gets on, we'll go from there. So it's just going to be a super fun show tonight, guys. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about hard rock and heavy metal. If you guys happen to like the show, we'd appreciate if you just hit the like button, guys. We're not going to sit here and beg you all night to hit the like button. It doesn't cost anything to hang out with us, guys. It's just we're here for friendship, and we appreciate the love and support. If you want to send us gifts, you're more than welcome to, but we are not here asking for it, and it is not an obligation to hang out with us to do that. So if you send us gifts, it's out of the goodness of your heart. We truly appreciate it. If you like this show, if we get to 1,000 likes, it hits the FYP. So if you're on and you can tap the like button a few times, that would be awesome. But we're not going to sit here and beg you to tap our faces, tap our noses, touch the screen, do any of that kind of stuff. You know the routine, guys. If you want to help us out, help us. If you don't, just enjoy the show. That's what we're here for. If you are new to us, say hi and introduce yourselves. If you've been here before, welcome back. It's a pretty simple concept, guys. We do this, like I said, once a week. Last Thursday we had to cancel. Kelly was at a concert. I had a meeting. Didn't make it happen, so we come back tonight. But we do this pretty much once a week, guys, unless there's some other circumstance where we can't do it or we're not able to, but for the most part we do one every week. When these videos are done, they get a little quick edit. Paranoia Threat, what's going on? Once you guys get the editing done and you see what's going on, I post it to YouTube, guys. All my stuff lives on my YouTube channel, One Fun Guy Podcast. So if you're head over there, everything that I've done with the Pod Cult, anything I've done with anybody else, I was just on a podcast this week with the Tool lady, Roberta. She's awesome. I had a bunch of fun doing that. She has a fantastic podcast, and it's well produced. It's got, she's been doing it for a while. She's got some friends helping her, which is awesome. Me and Kelly don't have anybody helping us. This is just us, right? I know Ellie has done some stuff with me before. She's edited a few, or not edited, but she's been kind of in and out of the podcast. So Resist the Temptation, what's going on? If you guys are on those, say what's up. Kelly will be joining me in just a minute. I am early. I just wanted to tell you guys about my podcast with Athena. She's going to be Sunday. She is going to be setting up a pretty big festival in Europe with a lot of heavy metal bands on there, hard rock and heavy metal bands. So I'm super excited to have her on to talk about it. And then what I'm going to do is, we've already previously discussed this, but once the concert's over, I believe it's in July or August, once it's done, I'm going to have her back on, and I want her to explain the entire experience to us, from the beginning to booking the bands, to having it, to being at the show, to everything that goes on with it. So she's going to be super fun. That's this Sunday at 2:00 p.m. Central Standard Time, guys. So and Paranoia Threat too, we're going to have you back on too. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. Life happens. It's been hectic. I know that there are a lot of people that I wanted to have back on, and I just wasn't able to do that. But Jess, what's up? So if you guys are on, say hi, follow me, and I'll follow you guys back, and we'll kind of go from there. But I would love to have you back on, Paranoia Threat, if you'd love to be back on. I know we were trying to do the horror podcast. We did one. It was uber successful. Obviously, I've changed the background, guys. I'm a heavy metal and hard rock fan. So if you guys know what I'm talking about, this is it, guys. So obviously, I'm a huge Kiss fan. I'm a huge horror movie fan. So if you like horror movies and hard rock and heavy metal, this is your place. So you've got time. So we'll set it up. I will shoot you a text a little bit later, and we will definitely I'll set it up and go from there. And we'll pick a date that works for you and works for us, and we'll do that. So we'll set everything up. I'm just waiting for Kelly. I'm going to text him and let him know that I'm here. So we'll go from there. Hopefully he'll hop on in a few minutes. I am a little bit early, guys. We do our show at 7:30, and I am early. I always usually am, so that's kind of the way that it is. So I'm just going to send him a message real quick. I'm not ignoring you guys. It's hard to do both. I'm trying to send a text message and do this. But yeah, so if you guys are new, welcome. If you've been here before, say hi, introduce yourselves, interact with each other on the live. That's what we like to do, guys. Like I said, if we could hit 1,000 likes, I know it hits the FYP page. That's always kind of the way we decide to do it. Sylvia, what's up? If you guys are new here, say hi. Introduce yourselves. If you've been here before, welcome back. Kelly will be on in a little bit. Once he gets on, we'll talk about the world of hard rock and heavy metal. There's some stuff that's happened in a little bit here, mainly with these guys up here. If you haven't seen the announcement, that's pretty much what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to give our take on it. I know I probably have a little bit different take than Kelly does, but that's why we have fun together, right? We kind of have, a conversation about what we think and about what's happening, and if we like it, if we don't like it, and then we kind of go from there. So that's pretty much it. So once Kelly gets on, we'll obviously dual screen, and then you guys still stay with us. Support him. He's Kelly Arzenic. Support me, One Fun Guy Podcast. If you guys can go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe, that would be awesome. It's One Fun Guy Podcast. It is fantastic. I've been doing this for about a year now, and I absolutely love it. It's kind of what motivates me. It's kind of given me a resurgence, and it's allowed me to meet a lot of cool and interesting people that I normally wouldn't have met before. Thank you so much, Paranoia. You're awesome. and again, thank you for what you do. And you are amazing. So we'll keep in touch. I'll send you a text later and we'll plan the podcast for sure. Ellie, what's going on? So Ellie is the one I mentioned earlier. She's always in my lives and she's always talking with people and chatting people up. And that's what we love, guys. We love to have you guys be interactive in the chat, talks amongst each other, introduce yourself, make new friends. That's what we're all about. If you guys see Ellie pop in and out, she's one of my OG followers. I've had a few. She's always in my lives with the support. We can't do this without you guys. So really, it means the world to us, especially me. And I know Kelly super appreciates it. But that's just how we are able to do this, guys. It's what gives us motivation to keep going and to keep putting out, good content and to keep putting out, our lives and to have our podcast channel. Kelly just came up with a song. It's linked in his bio. He's getting a ton of press on it, which is awesome. He worked really hard on it. The song is like kind of an industrial goth type sound with a little bit of metal overtone. If you know the band Author and Punisher, it kind of sounds like that. He's kind of got the Anal Nakrath type style going on, but it's a really catchy tune. If you like hard rock and heavy metal, you're going to like it. It does have a little bit industrial vibe, but that's what he's into. I was super impressed. I went to see Cyclone 9 with Vantana, and Cyclone 9 blew me out of the water. Nero is awesome. What he's able to do with just a machine is pretty incredible. If you kind of like that industrial black type metal like Mortis was doing, Nero's kind of like the newer version of that. Mortis is still around. If you guys don't know Mortis, he's the evil elf. He was the basis of Empire. The black metal band. He left Empire and he kind of started his own thing and he went more industrial, kind of like a new wave type metal sound, and it's really awesome. But he kind of had these like trance goth type metal songs, and it really took in a life of its own and a movement where Emperor is an awesome black metal band. If you guys don't know who Emperor is, definitely look them up. They were one of the OG black metal bands. Emperor, Mayhem, Celtic Frost, Dimmu Borgir, Behemoth. Now there's so many black metal bands, but 1349, they were kind of OG. All these, Cradle of Filth. Another one I can't leave out, Danny and the Boys from Cradle. But anyways, he took on a life of its own outside of Emperor, right? Everyone, is familiar with the black metal scene. It's a super fast, high, pitched voice and go from there. But, Mortis kind of took on a life of its own and kind of had this uniqueness to him. And he went with this evil elf thing, which was kind of a cool thing. So he put on a nose and he'd wear the long hair and he'd kind of have this, facade of, and he was in that gothic trance like metal movement as one of the key players in forming that. So I know I went on a tangent a little bit, but check out Just a Silly Girl. What's up? So yeah, just if you guys are on this and you're involved with it, I thank you guys. Kelly, thanks you guys. If you guys could share this out and like it, we appreciate it, guys. As soon as Kelly hops on, we're gonna talk a little bit about these guys here. And what they got going on. So, we're just kind of going on. Megan, what's up? So if you guys are new here, say hi. If you're Ben and OG, let me see if I can invite him in here. Give me a second. I'm going to see if I can do this. Give me 1 second. Why can't I do this? I'm trying to invite him and I can't. Maybe that should work. Kiss Casino in Oklahoma. Well, maybe one day. What's up, buddy?
Man. Hey, I'm sorry I'm late.
No worries. I was just shouting you out with the song and the stuff we got going on.
I've got so much fucking things to do. I never really told anyone publicly, I guess, but I would love to replace my fucking day job and
Sure.
do this for a living. And
I got you. We'll
Like
make it happen.
you
That's the
can't just do
dream.
music. What's that?
That's the dream.
Right? Yeah, but the thing is that you can't just. Although I should tell you, like I've told you that I'm in a sort of a development program type of thing for things, and there's a guy, he makes freaking $2,000 per week just from TikTok lives. My
You
gosh.
good. Well, you know what? You have to
if
invest
I
the
did
time,
that,
right?
I would be close to quit my day job. Let me put it that way. I'm not going to get to what he does, but
Yeah.
well,
Um,
maybe I will, but who knows?
I mean, the thing is you got to invest in yourself, right? I mean, that's the most important thing. And at what point do you say, I'm going to do it and put the time and effort that it really takes to do it in order to make it? I mean, it's there, right? It's for the taking. So,
Yeah, and it's not just one way, right? You have to have several streams going on at the
yeah,
same time. Like you do the live thing, you do the music thing, and then you know, to some extent, sponsorships or whatever, right? And you gotta
yeah,
sort of um, be comfortable in the way that you sell yourself, and how people are willing to separate themselves from their money, whether it's companies or
yeah.
individuals. So, but anyway, hey, so how you doing? I saw
Good.
a hospital picture where it looked like you were not your most comfortable self, but you're
Yeah,
doing all right.
I had a follow-up appointment from all the stuff that I had and everything looks good. I'm going to have a few more procedures in the future. And they're just preventative stuff. And hopefully everything goes good and then I'm clear. I've had a bunch of medical issues in the past, but I'm pretty much past those now. So everything looks good. These are just follow-up appointments that I need, consultations and stuff like that. And then we go from there and that's kind of it. So
Oh, I'm glad I had no idea about those
yeah,
issues, and I
no, I
couldn't tell
appreciate
just
it.
by looking at you. What
Yeah.
the times that we've met, like so. I'm glad things are going well, and that it
Yeah.
continues
I
that way. So,
appreciate that. And then, we'll have to tell everybody, right? Well, maybe we should the next time we do it, take them on the adventure with us, right? To go
right?
the record thing. That was pretty awesome, right?
I didn't know what to expect. Like
I didn't either,
countryside Illinois, like what could it be? And then it's like,
right?
whoa, this place is freaking. Okay, let's back up.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was a record fair, so a lot of vendors having. I would put it at 80% vinyl and maybe 20% CDs. So it's definitely more records than there was
yeah.
CDs.
I would, yeah, much more records, vinyl than any other type of stuff.
Yeah. So to a guy like me who used to be like a record store, like that was half my life back in the day. It was like, oh man, this is so awesome.
Right.
Because you can spend so much time, more than a day. You just want to flip through it and go through every bin there is
Yeah,
because you're hoping that you will find that nugget in there or the
yeah.
thing,
And
whatever,
I
right?
found one right after you said bye at that same booth I was at. I'm flipping through it, and the guy has the thing that says $5 off. It had an orange thing on it, right? And so we're talking. You said bye. I turn around, and the guy has a Sharpie out, and he crosses the 5 out, and he puts 10. So it was $10 off because he had just these two bins of stuff that he wanted to get rid of. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll see if it's there. So he had a couple of expensive things, right? Like $80 or $90, which were like $10 off would have been, 70 or $80, which is still good if you didn't want to spend the whole price. And then I found the Teenage Time Killers and I was like, I got to get this. So,
And I've never heard of them, but that's really awesome. Like to me, is like I'm in a situation now where I really have to pinch pennies. Like I
yeah,
cannot spend a penny more on anything
sure. No, right.
that
So
I'm
you got a
supposed to.
couple of stuff, though,
But
right?
I figured out.
Let me see if I can find it here first. I don't know what I did with it. Oh, here. So this is what I got. So the guy had basically these stickers on it, and if it had an orange sticker on it, it was $5 off when I first started looking. And then he changed the 5 to 10, literally when I was standing there. And so I said, this is $10. Now, I don't know if you can see who's on it, but it is Randy Blythe. Um, who else is on there? I can't read it backwards. So I'll read it. Dave Grohl, Matt Skiba, Jello Baffria, Randy Blythe, Corey Taylor, and Reed Mullen are all the vocalists on it, and it's like a punk hardcore sound. So if you are, I would probably say like kind of like the Exploited meets Bad Brains meets Hatebreed. The
Holy
best
shit.
best
That
way to
sounds
describe it.
awesome.
So
That sounds really good.
so this was my find for $10. So that's what I ended up buying.
Yeah. That's I got 6 records, I think, for all of $21.
Yeah.
Not a single metal one, because the metal albums, especially old ones, they're everybody knows about Discogs and all those places nowadays,
Mhm.
right? So they can just go online and see
Yeah,
what they're worth.
for
So
sure.
you don't make. Oh, hey Ali, sorry, I didn't see your message, but hello. So you don't necessarily get the places now where, like, even the people with Christian soul R&B end up with a fucking punk rock album in the middle, and it
Yeah.
costs $3, and it's something that you've looked for a long time, and you've seen it before for 40 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't really happen anymore. Except
Yeah.
for, there were a few stands there that I really liked, though, and it seemed like they just had boxes and boxes and boxes of whatever,
Yeah.
and
And
just
just went
lowered their prices throughout the day. So it was probably $10 a record when they first came in, and by the time I got to their booth, they were down to $2 a
yeah.
record. Because I picked out 4, and the guy first said, "Well, that's $20," and then it's like, "Oh no, hold on, it's $2 now, so that's 8." you know,
Yeah.
so so it's it's interesting, when you think about the way to make a living out of that, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of the people that are also buying records there aren't necessarily buying it for just their listening pleasure, but
Sure.
also as a way of making
Yeah.
income, right?
And think about
I
it too,
found,
right? If you travel from a long way, like say you came from Michigan or Indiana, right? And you bought a truckload of vinyl, well, your goal is to sell it all, right? You don't want to truck it all back, right? If you have a warehouse full of stuff and you started off at 10 and then you went to 5 and then you went to 2, and at the end of the day you're going to be everything's a buck, right? Well, you just want to get rid of it, because if you bought, 5,000 vinyl records and you bought 20 boxes with you, well, the goal is to go home with no boxes, right? You don't want to take
yeah,
anything back.
yeah, and the thing is that when you're a seller, you think about the bulk of it, right? Like, how much did I pay for all of this, and how much profit do I need to make in order to make a living out of it,
Hmm.
right? Because that's it. That's probably what they do.
Yeah, that
Um,
and estate sales, I would imagine, probably, right? They
so
probably go and buy somebody's entire vinyl collection for $50, and they have 1,000 vinyl records now. If they sell every one for $1, they've made their money back tenfold.
yeah, um, and also at the same time, they probably don't have the storage space to be able to
Right.
save them all if they didn't sell them. So
Sure.
that's the thing. Like, they just have to move them quickly at a price where at least they make some profit, right?
Yeah. So did
So
you
at
happen to
least
notice the guy, by the way, too, the one that was next to you when you were buying your albums? He spent like $350 on like almost, it seemed like 100 vinyls. He had a stack.
yeah, yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, sometimes when you get home, and that's the beauty of Discogs too, because there were definitely some stands that knew what they had. It's like,
Hmm.
if you're selling Rain and Blood, and the stamp says, this is 1987, you got something expensive there. Like, you
Hmm.
can sell $420, and people will pay that.
Sure.
Um, but if you just pick up a stack of estate sale things, you just put them in boxes and you don't go through every record, there is a a
Mm,
gold label South of Heaven record in there, and you just don't care because you just paid $50 for, like you said, a
right.
thousand albums, and you don't have
Yeah,
time to
for
go
sure.
through it all. Um, so for some people, it's just like that. You're like, I'll pick up these 100 albums, and maybe there's two or three in
Right.
there that are actually that special edition that a collector would pay top dollar for, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you know about Discogs, the Discogs app?
Yeah, because you type in the album and it kind of lists what it's going for, brand new versus, somewhat good, very good. They kind of give you that, realm of what it should be, and then what other people have paid for it, right? So you kind of get the realm of like what it should be. So if somebody has the album listed for $30, brand new, and Discog says it's $22, well, they're just trying to make a little bit of money on it. So it's kind of the spur of the moment. But like if somebody else buys the album from Target for 19.99, you could say this is $20 and you're asking 30. Can we, can you help me out a little bit?
Yeah, and the thing is with Discogs is that they have pretty much, because it's for record collectors a lot, right?
Sure.
So they have every freaking pressing of every vinyl or
Mm-hmm.
every edition of the even the cassette or the eight
Yeah.
track or whatever it might be, listed. So you can look up the exact copy that you have, the exact edition that you have, and see whether or not that is valuable or not. It may or may not matter, but to someone that collects things. I remember a while ago you picked up a Kiss Alive
Mm-hmm.
album, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think I told you, like, scan the barcode if there is one and look it up on Discogs whether or not that price is good or not, right? Um, because it could matter. Like if it's a reissue, it's not worth much.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an original pressing from 1976, like, yeah, fuck yeah,
Yeah.
$40 is a fucking major
Right.
deal.
Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, I think I told you about when I went to a little record store in Oak Park, um, and picked up the Ace Frehley soul album, and it was $5. And then I go home and I check Discogs, and it's like, well, that particular pressing is generally like the median sale price is 25. So goodbye for me. I don't care. I'm not going to sell it or whatever, right? But it still feels like, well, that was good. Or when you go through your albums that you have at home, perhaps, and add them in, and it's like I've done, like I have some records that I bought back in the day that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
care for very much, but today, like they're worth 60, $80 or whatever,
Right.
right? Um, so Discogs is a really cool thing, um, to sort of justify your purchases. Sometimes it's demoralizing too, because it could be the
Yeah.
opposite. Like, um, I bought a Parliament album with like a really cool 3D cover, and I thought,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, this is really cool. And I thought that these guys don't know what they're having. And then I come home and it's like, yeah, no, that was a reissue thing
Yeah.
that they
So,
just spiced up. So
um, let me see if I can find it. I don't know if I have it. So I went to, yeah. So here. So I went to that place and uh, where what town was it? It started with an M. It's a little bit further south and west of me. It was about 45 minutes away. Mendota, right? So the guy
okay,
has a bunch of records. So I called him on one particular one I found in Facebook, and it was this one here. And I had asked him, I go, oh no, wait, not this one. This one here. So I asked him, I go, hey, do you still have this in stock? The Guns N' Roses Live in Chicago album from
oh, nice.
1992. So he goes, yeah, I still have it. I go, how much is it? He's like, $21, like it was mentioned. I'm like, awesome. So I ended up buying that one for 20, this one for 16, The one in Brazil, that's where they did the acoustic one from the couch. So that's the one that's like kind of all over the web. I ended up buying. I spent $90 with this guy, right? But I got all the Guns N' Roses imports. I got this. This was the steal of the day that I found. This one here, and so I got the Samael.
Oh
like
man,
their greatest hits. This was $10. So like I couldn't pass that up. And then
yeah.
I found this one there. The Hate. They're a Polish death metal band. This was $8. So I ended up getting that. And I can't remember what else I got. Oh, I got the Godflesh one.
Oh, you got it got just now?
Yeah. It was a live one. I got this for $13.
What?
Yeah.
That's
I'll have
street,
you know what?
Street Cleaner Live?
Yeah.
My God.
I'll
Okay.
take one of these days. I'll take you there and show you, right? So I buy all these albums, and the guy's kind of lifting it out. His name's Ron. He's an older guy, right? So I found this one for $5. It was brand new, the Chuck Berry, and I was like, I'll take that. And then I found this one, since you mentioned Parliament, right? The Funkadelic P-Funk.
Oh, One Nation Under Groove. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's
so this was
awesome.
$7. So he goes, what I'm gonna do?
$7 for
Yeah.
Okay.
So he says, he goes, what I'm going to do is, since you came all the way out here and you're buying all these albums, I'm going to give you these two. He's like, so he gave me the Chuck Berry one and he gave me the P-Funk one. So these were free. So $12 was free.
Oh,
So-
fuck.
So I got that. And then on the way out, I happened to see, where is it? There was one other one I got there. It was another Guns N' Roses one. And so I bought all the GNR stuff, and he had a ton of imports, and everything was awesome. But I think I bought 8 or 9 albums, and I got I bought 8 albums. I got the 2 for free, $90.
That's amazing. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's about what is it worth to you. I
Sure.
mean, it's a different thing when if you're buying it to listen to it, like, what are you willing to pay to listen to it?
Yeah, and I bought.
If you have no intention of selling it,
No.
then that's a non-issue. Like,
Yeah.
how much would you pay to put that record on a record player? You know?
Yeah. So the Guns N' Roses one I wanted, right? He had it advertised on Facebook. That's how I found him on Facebook Marketplace. It was $21. So I said, do you still have that? He goes, yeah, I do. I go, hold it for me. I'll be in. So he's like, I'm ordering some other ones too whenever you come in. Well, obviously it's not an easy drive for me, right? Like it was like 48 minutes away from my house, but I had nothing to do on a Sunday. I'm like, well, I'm going to take a ride over there. And I walked in and he had a warehouse full of I mean, it was like, it was kind of like what we went to at the show in his warehouse. And he had stuff from $1 all the way up to import stuff that was like $100. So he was like reasonably priced. But the more I kept buying, he's like, well, I'll take $1 off of that one. I'll take $2 off of that one. I'll give you this one for, a $10 because it was marked like $13. So he give me a couple dollars here and there. And then he gave me those 2 for free. He goes, these ones are
That's
on me.
amazing.
Yeah. So
That's amazing. By the way, I completely forgot that I promised you that the next time we met, that I was going to bring my a vinyl player that I have. I don't know if it's working or not, and if it would, good.
Yeah, so
If
I've
not-
been very lucky. So I ended up buying this one here,
Oh, you got one?
the Audio Technica one. Walmart had it on sale for
Awesome.
$40, and it's Bluetooth.
Nice.
So I Bluetoothed it to
Oh,
the
it's
speaker.
Bluetooth too.
Yeah. So the speakers over there, the Bluetooth.
Awesome.
And so it's a pretty good setup for, I mean, the speaker I won at a meeting that I was at, so I didn't pay anything for the speaker. And this one, it was $40 on sale at Walmart. It was $79.99. It was on sale for $39.99, so I bought it.
Okay, so last time we talked about this, you didn't have a record player.
I didn't have
obviously
one, no.
you're old enough that you
So,
had one.
yeah,
before.
so it's surprisingly enough, when we first started talking about it, I think I had 4 or 5 vinyl albums that I had bought. I bought the Pantera one, and I bought like a couple other ones, and I'm like, why I bought these? I can't even listen to them. I'm a record player. So I hunted, and I ended up buying one on Amazon. And when I bought it on Amazon, it was like the one that looks like a suitcase where you lift it up and it's got a
Yeah.
Bluetooth speaker in it. It was fine, right? So I had it for about a week. And then when I went to plug in the Bluetooth speaker to connect to it, you could hear the one that's inside of the machine like muffling
Yeah.
behind the big one. And I'm like, I
Shit.
don't really want this. So I sent it back to Amazon. I said, listen, I think I paid $39 for it. So it wasn't a big deal. So as I'm sending it back to Amazon, I was just happened to be on Walmart one day and I saw this one. I was like, well, for $40, I'm like, I can't really beat that. And it's Bluetooth connected and
And
it doesn't have an internal speaker. It just automatically connects. So it was perfect. So I put it in and that's what I've been jamming with now. So
it's Audio Technica, so you
yeah,
know that it's got some quality at
yeah,
least. You know, the Germans or whatever it is,
right.
kind of know what they're doing. So let me ask you this then. You know, like obviously, you know, you used to play the records when you were younger, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, you, like you said, you bought a record or two just because there's an experience in just buying a record. And we went to Rolling Stone
Yeah.
a couple of months ago, where you bought a couple, I think.
Yeah, I bought the him one and I bought the Opeth one.
Yeah. So, you know, when you know, however many years later, you put on that first record on that turntable, the one that you just bought,
Hmm.
and music is coming out, and it sounds like the way, like, was, you know, what was it a different experience to you? Like
It
it,
was unique because so when I was a kid, my introduction to records was my parents' records, right? So my mom, she had a lot of the old 50s and 60s rock. So she had like, the Richie Valens and Ricky Nelson and a lot of the doo-wop stuff, right? So Frankie Valli.
great
She
shit.
had a lot of the Elvis stuff. She had a lot of like the 50s, 40s and 50s rock, right? And then my dad was the complete opposite. He had like the Frank Sinatras, the Dean Martins, the Mario Lanzas, the Tony Bennett, right? So those were like when I was a
Italians.
kid, I would say, well, I want to listen to these. So I would listen to Richie Valens and I would listen to a lot of that kind of stuff, right? And so that's what I got from my mom's side of it. And then with my dad's side, I was into the Dean Martin and the Frank Sinatra and the typical Italian stuff that every Italian family would have, right? So then as I started to get older, my cousin Johnny had a huge record collection, but his was more of like The Who, The Beatles, Kiss, Led Zeppelin, Queen, Foghat, like a lot of the 70s and 60s rock stuff, right? So I remember listening to Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon on vinyl, right? On his thing. And that was kind of how we had it set up, right? Saving Sound, what's going on? So we
Save
basically,
us now, you're here.
um,
Sorry, it's one of my
yeah.
pieces.
So so that's kind of got me into like music, right? That was the first time I ever heard Kiss and Queen and David Bowie and stuff like that. My parents didn't have any of that stuff, right? So listening to that was a completely unique experience because that was kind of, and he had the old stand, right? So the vinyl was in the middle, the record player was on top, the speakers were on top of that. So you lifted up the record player and it had this really kind of like dark film to it, and you would put the vinyl on, you would hit play and the needle would come over, right? So that was kind of how I experienced music for the first time. That was really captivating. Obviously I grew up in the transitional period between cassettes and CDs, right? The first cassettes I ever bought were Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood and Slaughter Stick It To You. We were in Lake Geneva and I was with my cousin Chris, and our parents gave us $10 and they said, you buy whatever you want. You got $10 to spend. So we went and we saw, I had the $5 Motley Crue and the $5 Slaughter Stick It To You. And that's what I bought. And I asked my mom, I go, hey, when we get home, can I buy a little Walkman? Because I didn't have anything to play them on. I had one of those little old school cassette tapes where you pop the button and the thing flips up. You slide the tape and you push it down, you play. So that wasn't portable. It was at home. So they ended up getting me for Christmas that year a Sony Walkman, and that's what I listened to all my cassettes on, and that was kind of how I grew up. And then once I got into music with CDs in probably the mid Probably early '90s, right? I think because my first CD I ever bought was Appetite for Destruction, and my parents had to buy it because I was too young to get it. I think I was 12 years old, and it was the NC-17 type thing, and you had to be a certain age to buy it. And so my mom bought it for me and gave
Thank
it to me,
goodness
and
for
that was,
PMRC.
you know, so
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I have a similar experience. I've got a few years on you, I think, but yeah, I mean, listening to records in my family was a little bit of an event type of thing. Like, uh, my dad, when he was listening, because he, oddly enough, this was not common in Sweden at all. He listened to outlaw country. I might have told you that. Like he loved Johnny Cash,
yeah.
Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson,
Hmm.
the badass country people, right? So whenever he went on business trips to the U.S., he went to see those guys live
Yeah.
because they obviously never came to Sweden.
Right.
And when they did, some of those people actually did, and they loved Sweden because I guess we're pretty hard ass people, like northern toughness and all that stuff, right? But yeah, so when he wanted to listen to music, he went into the room where his record player was and listened to it mostly on headphones, and that was the thing. Or it was at Christmas time, like when, he put on Handel's Messiah or whatever. Like, there's an act when you put on a record. Like you go through the records, you pull it out, and you put it on a thing, and you get it started, and it's
Right,
like it's a bit of an event that happens, right? And I think that stuck with me in a different way. It's a different thing to just pull up Spotify and type in a song, which is great, by the way. Like I love that when I'm out driving, that I can just sort of
Yeah.
tell the car to play a certain song that I all of a sudden feel like listening to. But at the end of the day, we just went to a record fair where you bought a record, uh, and you come home, and most of the time it's a record you haven't heard before. And then it's the anticipation of maybe breaking the seal and then putting it on the
Hmm.
turntable and lowering the needle. And it's like you want it so bad
Yeah.
to be awesome. Like it's really an air of positivity and anticipation and excitement that comes with the act of putting
Yeah.
on
It,
a record.
yeah.
And speaking of cassettes, so when I was in Sweden, like you didn't buy cassettes so much, right? That wasn't because it's much less of a car culture than here, right? Like you
Mhm.
can't obviously put on a fucking
Right.
record in a car. So that's why I think that the 8-track never ever happened in Europe. And cassettes
Hmm.
were a way of transferring your records onto a portable media,
Right.
right?
Sure.
um even before there were Walkmans. But I remember getting my first Walkman, and that was great because I could just sort of um but that's also, I mean, we still call it mixtape,
Yeah.
right? It's still called a fucking mixtape because
Hmm.
it was like, you had to sit there, you had to be agile, right? To
Yeah.
put the needle
Oh,
on
for
the
sure.
record, and then unpause the cassette tape, and then hit the pause button at the right time, and then switch to the next record, and get a good mix going, and hopefully you got something good going, um, pausing it correctly. And sometimes you try to do like a little bit of a fancy thing of hitting the pause button on the cassette tape
Yeah.
when the last downbeat happened, and then you release it when the first upbeat happened on the next song, and it would be like a
Yeah.
fun transition or whatever, right? But all that put together, I just feel like that mystique and the anticipation and excitement, and an event that it still was to put on a record every time. um Not to mention, when there were parties, right? And it was whoever had the party had a record collection, and that's the music you listen to.
Right.
So it was more fun to go to parties at people's places where you knew that they had a good record collection.
Yeah.
And depending on their mentality, I was pretty liberal with the handling of my physical media, so I have a lot of scratched
Yeah.
records. And then there were some that were very careful about theirs, so they were like, you have to ask me to put the record on because otherwise, while to me it was like when I woke up the next morning, I had 10 records out of their covers scattered around the floor or whatever, right? Because that's the way it rolled. Um, but it's definitely a different thing,
Sure.
when it
So
is that. So that's still
yeah,
what stuck with me, and that's why I still
yeah, and
really
you're
enjoy going
yeah, and,
and even go to a record store. Sorry,
no,
I
no,
keep rambling on here,
no, no. Go ahead.
but when you're trying to discover music, right? And in order to discover the music, you have to go to a record store, and if you go to the same store many times, the
Hmm.
people that work there get to know you. They get to know what your taste is, and then they know that next time you come down, they got something in, and they will recommend that to you,
Thanks,
and they
Ken.
will say, "Hey, you should listen to this," and
Yeah,
then you do. Like it's like,
right.
and the way that happened, by the way, is like, hey, something just came in and I think you're gonna like it. So they pull up the record, and the first thing is that it's almost like going to a restaurant. you know
Yeah.
you know so it's like you see the cover, it's like, oh, that sounds
Mhm.
good, and then you check it out, you check the back, like, who's the producer, what's the label, what's, are
Right.
there members that I know, or whatever, right? And then you sort of take a sample, you put it on the listening station, and you sort of decide to dig it or not. And it's just such a different thing than someone saying, hey, check out this song on Spotify.
Right.
So it's everything that has to do with music and records turned
Mhm.
into an event of anticipation
Right.
and excitement. So um, it wasn't about access as
Yeah.
much, right?
Sure.
All right, I'm done.
No, you're 1,000% right. And I was gonna say too, like when you listen to vinyl, it was an experience, right? You pop a CD in, you listen to it, you can skip a track, you can skip ahead, you can go back, you can fast forward. With a vinyl, you're kind of stuck, right? If you are in the middle of a vinyl and you want to go to a track at the end, you got to take the needle off, you got to flip the album over, you got to find that line, and you got to drop the needle on it, right? Where back in the day with CDs, you could just skip to song number 8
Yep.
and it take you right there. So it
Yep.
was, it was more accessible. The thing that I was going to say though is like I grew up in an era where when CDs started going to digital, right? When the iPod first came out, right? And you could store 150 gigs on something the size of basically, a notepad, right? That was revolutionary, right? So like I remember bringing duffel bags of CDs over to my buddy Matt's house. We would pop them in the laptop. It would take about 3 to 4 minutes to burn a CD, and
Yeah.
we would create these musical files, and we would take these musical files and we would transfer them over to the iPod, and we would load up our iPods with all these songs, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of songs. And that experience of hanging out with him and burning these CDs is the same feeling I get when I buy a vinyl record and I come home and I unwrap it and I take my time to listen to it. It's an experience. It's not just, buying a CD and popping it in, listening to a couple songs, fast forwarding here and there, and then taking out, listening to another one. It's the experience of listening to the music, right? So when you put a vinyl record on, you listen to the whole thing. You don't really skip ahead. You block
Yeah.
out a half an hour, 40 minutes to listen to it, and that's what you do. And that's the cool thing about the vinyl experience, unlike the CD experience, is you actually listen to it. Because CDs, you could find the song you like and then skip to two or three ahead, find that song you like. Whereas vinyl, you're kind of
Yep.
forced to listen to it.
Yeah, it was a slippery slope for sure. I mean, there's a reason why the whole concept of an album still sticks around, and that is because of the vinyl record.
Mm-hmm.
Seven Sound, I totally relate to you about the moving the needle thing, especially when you've had a few drinks. It's a very nervous thing to do.
Yeah.
Uh, it's so much easier also if you're in a party mode to have a CD, and all you need to do is just grab the edges, which easily fits in one hand, and put it in a tray,
Hmm.
and then hit play. Like there's
Right.
a there a lot more things can be avoided when
Sure.
you do that. And the mentality I had when the CD started to come over were twofold. So one was, if it was new music coming out on CD, then it didn't bother me so much. Like, but if I wanted to buy like a fog hat or something like that,
Hmm.
then I want to buy it on vinyl, because
Yeah.
that's how it was released. But new music, it didn't bother me so much, and especially because the labels wanted to make more money, and
Oh,
sell
sure.
more CDs, because
And
it
you
was
could press a lot more of them
much
too.
much
Yeah,
cheaper to
that's the thing.
manufacture,
Right. You
for
could
sure.
make a lot more of them.
And they charged more for them, so it was like cheaper to make, and you
Hmm.
could charge more for them, but you tended to get a song or two more on the CDs. Like, they tended to have a lot of bonus tracks back in those
Yeah.
days, so it's like, okay, you know and they took up less room too,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So I fell into the trap of buying more CDs, which I now regret, and a lot
I
of my
think we
buddies
all
did
do,
not.
right? We all went through our phase.
So um but there was still that thing of the album, of the record, and even to the cassette thing, because that's
Hmm.
how we, in my group of friends, it was like, I've said this before, but we had, you know kind of specialists. We had the guy that was into the death metal. He was the one that
Hmm.
bought the death metal records. I was the guy that bought pop punk and extreme hardcore, and there were other folks that bought other things. And then, because we couldn't afford to buy all the same albums, all of us.
Sure. Right.
So then what we did was that we gave each other a cassette tape. So, like, every stereo rack had a cassette deck and a record player. So it didn't really matter. And if you had a first copy straight off the record, not much of a sound quality difference there, right? But that's also the reason why I heard from Nick, the main Entombed guy, back when Entombed were a thing.
Hmm.
Although, by the way, I should say that it seems like they're reuniting their old thing, and Nick is part of it, and
Okay.
gonna do some new Entombed shit. But anyway, he always said that every album we make needs to fit on one side of a cassette tape, like the C90 tape. So we're not going to make a record that's longer than 45 minutes, because it won't fit on one side of a cassette tape. So that was still a thing too. Like, cross
Yeah.
media was still a consideration, right? Um, but it was still like, yeah, if you put an album on a cassette tape, you put the tape in and you listen to it
Yeah.
until it turned, and there was
Right. Till the film
hopefully
broke.
something on the other side. If it was often that's often how it worked too. It's like, hey, you bought that Entombed album, can you tape it for me? And it's like, yeah, so that'll fill up one side. What am I going to put on the other?
Hmm.
And then you got a surprise.
Yeah.
Something
Right.
else to discover. And it
Yeah.
could be, depending on the energy of the person that was working on it, might have made you a bit of a mixed B-side, and wrote down the tracks on that,
Yeah.
the insert, like you had those like
Right.
tiny rows
little
on
lines.
the cassette cover. So they might make the effort to make a bit of a mixtape on the B-side, or it's like, this
Yeah.
record is fucking awesome too, so I'll give you that one, right? So that was also a way of discovering things back then, was that, what happens on the B-side.
Yeah. That's it.
So
Yeah, and I'll tell you that the other cool thing about that, I've experienced buying more vinyl now than anything, is like you said before, it's kind of like the hunt, right? Because I have probably at least 500,000 songs on my phone, right? So this here is the majority of my music. When I want to find something new, I go in and listen to it. When I'm at a vinyl store and I find an album that I'm not necessarily sure what it is, I go right to iTunes and I type in the name of the song and I listen to it. I'm like, oh, this sounds good. I'll buy it, right? If I don't know what it is, it's kind of, do you want to waste your time on it? But I think Saban Sound said it earlier, which is right. all my favorite songs are on my phone, right? So when I buy a vinyl album, it's because it's either I really, really, really like the band and I want to have it, or it's something unique that I never had on CD. So that's kind of my experience buying it, because I don't want to buy or re-buy everything that I ever bought on CD on vinyl, because it would cost me a fortune, right? I'm like you. I think I had like 3,000 CDs. So obviously I'm not going to buy 3,000 vinyl records to match my CD collection, because everything I ever had on CD is on my phone. I don't need to rebuy it. But all the albums that I loved, I would definitely buy those on vinyl, and that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I try to get back a little bit nowadays though to, and I'm being anachronistic here. Like I'm trying to get back to what it used to be a little bit, to recapture it.
Mm-hmm.
Seven Sound will know Dax or Hero Brian's side piece, who's managing the Discord. So when we
Yeah,
did
yeah.
our visit to Rolling Stone, um, to our shopping experience
Mm-hmm.
there, I took some pictures. I didn't do what you did. I didn't go live, but I took some pictures and posted it to my Discord. And and Dax said, "Oh fuck that Gate Creeper! I wish I had it."
Right.
I didn't really know about Gate Creeper,
Yeah.
but it's still like, when you go on one of those, like, okay, I'm gonna buy a bunch now, right? I
Right.
gotta have some dark horses. I gotta have something that is a bit of a gamble. So
Yeah.
that was a gamble too, right? I
Sure.
didn't look up or try to listen to what that album sounded like on Spotify before. I could have,
Right.
I could have wanted to, but I still was like, nah, that's gonna be my dark horse. It's like,
Yeah. Let's roll with it.
I
Yeah.
don't know this, but someone I trust tells me that it's good, so
Yeah.
I'll buy it. It was $20.
Yeah. Bargain bin
That
stuff
at
you
that
got to
particular
gamble on,
time,
right?
I had a
If,
different budget,
if
so
you
I
could
could
buy
totally
something for
get
less
a
than a
twenty
couple
dollar Dark
bucks,
Horse album,
yeah.
right?
So this is how I justify the bargain bin, right? I always go to a cup of coffee, right? If I could buy something for less than a cup of coffee that I would normally have bought the coffee with, right? Cup of coffee now is $4 or $5, right? So if I
Oh
find
fuck
a
yeah!
vinyl and it's less than a cup of coffee, I'll buy it, right? Even if I'm kind of like, yeah, on the fence about it, that's worth my time to gamble. Now, if I buy that same vinyl album, I'm not going to gamble on $40, right? But I'll
Yep.
gamble on $5. I'll gamble on $3, right? I'll get stuff. Dunkin' Donuts. If you go get a large coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, it's $3.79. It's $4.50 with tax, and some of them are over $5,
It's
depending on where you go.
still,
It's
don't get
everywhere.
me started on
Starbucks is $7
don't get
for
me
a
started on
large.
Starbucks. Well, depending on what you want to put into it.
Yeah,
If it's a straight up black coffee, then you can get away with 350.
yeah.
But yeah,
But yeah,
but
so
but but to your point, I got, you were next to me when I got like four albums for
mhm. Yeah,
no, one was actually a 45 with four tracks on it, but for $2 each,
yeah,
right? And that feels like, yeah, no.
right.
I got a Sly and the Family Stone where I recognized one song, right? But it's Sly and the Family Stone, so how bad can it be? And also, Robert Palmer. Who likes Robert Palmer? Well, nobody. Well,
Unless you're
that I
addicted to
like.
love.
But the thing is that there's one song on that one album
Yeah,
that is one of my favorite songs of all time, called Johnny and Mary. Fantastic fucking song. I'll pay $2 just to have that song
yeah, right,
on a
right.
record. Martha and the Muffins, Canadian, because I lived in Canada for 20 plus years. Kind of legend in the Toronto scene, as in new wave. I'd only heard one song, but it's like
Hmm.
$2. Yeah, I'll get it. Like it's so I'm totally with you, Seven Sound, on that. Like the bargain bin stuff, and you're spending $2 or whatever. So what? you know,
That's it, right? Who
it's like
cares?
if you're that seriously out of space that you cannot fit three albums more than what you have, then your living situation is pretty rough, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Uh, or it's like, I remember bargain bin stuff too, where it's like, I don't know this band, but I recognize the label, and
Mhm.
everything else I have from this particular label has been fantastic. And something that I've lost that you're really good at, Marcus, is that you remember names so well. And I used to keep
Mhm.
more track on that, as in, like, oh, here's a producer name that I know that has produced a number of other albums, or there's a member
Yeah.
here that is a small time member, but I do remember that member name who was also a small time member in another band that I really like. So this is probably similar to it, or whatever, right?
Yeah, and that
So
just comes from years of
it,
reading the vinyl notes on CDs, right? The linings. Because I used to, when I bought a CD, I would always unfold it and read it, right? So I would always read the back of bands that they thanked, producers that they thanked, and other musicians that they thanked, right? So I remember, for example, when I bought the Mortician CD, right? I think it was Zombie Apocalypse. I opened it up and it says, Will Romer would like to thank, and he mentioned a plethora of other bands on that kind of grindcore, death metal scene, right? And I had no idea what these bands were, right? So I started writing them down on a sheet of paper. And then I would go through the Pit magazine, and I would go through Metal Legend. I would see if I saw any of these bands on there. And then
yeah,
back in the day, in the Pit, on the very last page of the indexy, you could buy CDs. So I think they were like 14.99, and if you bought three or more, it was like free shipping, right? So I would go down the list and be like, oh, well, here's a band, right? Like, so I think one of them was Deeds of Flesh, right? They had toured together. I didn't know who Deeds of Flesh was, so I wrote it down. I'm like, oh, Deeds of Flesh, I could buy their CD here. So I ordered it, right, and I got it, and I loved it. So that's all I did is I used to read the liner notes, and I would write down all the other bands, and then I try to find them.
yeah, and you gotta have a pretty fucking good memory of that too. I had two. I was fortunate enough to have two really close friends that were huge in the Scandinavian tape trading scene. I might have mentioned that before, but Forsberg was credited by Nick of Entomb to be one of the most influential people in Scandinavian death metal, because he knew all these people and all these names and
Mm-hmm.
associated them with everything, so he could pass things on. And that's also how he got reputable, and because he knew that shit. He knew all the names and the bands and the crossovers and everything. So he really had a method of picking out the cream from the crop. Same thing with Jonas, who for a couple of years played guitar for At the Gates, but then got the boot for behaving badly. But he was also huge in the tape trading scene for the very same thing, for the very same
Mm-hmm.
reason. I mean, I'm sure that there's some sort of maybe autism there in terms of special ability
Yeah, yeah,
of being able to remember those names, making the connections, um and uh and putting things together. But it's amazing when you talk to these people, like how many names. And you too, by the way, I'm getting a little bit of a flashback to those guys with you,
mm-hmm.
because you know all these fucking names that I have no idea. uh but it was like, one example that comes to mind is when Therapy came out. Me and Forsberg were working at a radio station together, and he said, "Oh, Therapy, cool. That bass player there, I used to write letters to him. He was in a metal band called Evil Priest."
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like Therapy,
Right.
alternative,
Yeah.
band. It's like, yeah, no, he was an Evil Priest. I know him well. Like, if they come to town, I'll
Right.
go
Yeah.
say hello. It's like so weird, like all these things that happen with various names. But that's also how you
Yeah.
identify
Right.
in so
And
many
so,
ways. Like, this is
and
what's good, this is what's
right.
not so
And
good.
so, speaking of Therapy, right? Therapy was very unique because in the United States they were on Earache, and Earache had a bunch of death metal. So you'd have Napalm Death was on Earache. You'd have Sepultura was on Earache. You had a lot of but they had a lot of industrial bands too on Earache, which kind of threw the
Pitch
world, right?
Shifter,
Because
Godflesh,
you would find Godflesh, Fudge Tunnel, all these other bands on
Pitch
Earache.
Shifter, yeah.
So if you were looking at that from like a metal, like from Metal Blade, right? Metal Blade didn't have any of that. If it wasn't metal in some capacity, it wasn't on that label. Earache was very unique in the United States because they had a bunch of bands, that were on that label that weren't necessarily in conjunction with each other, right? And so that was the unique thing about Earache, because every other label that was metal driven was all metal. They didn't deviate from it at all.
Now we're going to go off on one of our famous tangents here, which is now Earache, because Earache was one of those huge labels that my group of friends really kept a close eye on. We kept a close eye on Earache and Relapse. Close eye on Earache and Relapse. We paid a lot of attention to. Metal Blade were huge. They were kind of like, Megadeth.
Right.
Like,
you knew you were getting though.
But yeah. But what's interesting about Earache is that they are considered generally as like a discovery of metal type thing, but they were not. For a very long time, they were really not a metal label.
Right.
I would say that they started off with Napalm Death, but Napalm Death were not considered metal. They were hardcore. Like they were just going hardcore faster. Right? It wasn't doing metal faster. Like they were punk rockers. They had protest songs. They were, a political entity. They weren't at all related to the Iron Maidens or other British bands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Earache is a British label, right? So they were totally a hardcore label. And then when they branched out to have American bands, they had bands like Wehrmacht, which were also hardcore. Or OLD, Old Lady Drivers, which were also very hardcore. And then, when they started to branch out from that, Fine Carcass was sort of maybe the first that was a little bit more metal-ish. But that's because they came out of Napalm Death. But they were still doing, Godflesh, like you said, or Fudge Tunnel, or Pitch Shifter, or, like it wasn't metal.
Right.
So the whole metal thing,
unique.
the metal thing, I don't think started until Carcass did the Heartwork thing or actually they got into Entombed. They did release early Entombed, just because it was too good to ignore. I think, and all the Scandinavians, all of us in Sweden, listened to Earache, and all of us were really paying close attention to what Earache were doing.
Yeah.
Unseen Terror. Intense Degree, like all that shit, so it's interesting, the Earache label and the impression that they made on extreme metal as it happened was that it really totally was unique. Founded in hardcore, it was not founded in Iron Maiden, Noabum. Shit, like it was like no shit, like it was like no, we're gonna do harder, faster.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so that's kind of, and another one in the United States too that had a lot of black metal bands on it was Candlelight. So Candlelight was a very unique label as well because it had a really plethora of metal on it, from doom to black to they really had this eclectic group of bands on Candlelight. Was another one that was really in these States, was like a pretty progressive label.
Labels had their own sort of niche, like Music for Nations were a little bit more the classic thrash. They had Creator and Destruction and those guys, and Metal Blade had more of the American metal thing, and Relapse had the burgeoning death scene, like they had Repulsion and I think they did the early Death and not Morbid Angel were on Earache, I think.
Yeah, Morbid Angel was, well, they were on a couple, because I think the first Morbid Angel was Megaforce, and then they left them and they went to that other label.
Yeah, because Megaforce was another one of those a little bit more cheesy American
Yeah,
things that
right.
the
Yeah,
Europeans were like, um, yeah. Um, but see what I mean? Like, it was like, these labels had their niches. So
Mhm.
going back to what we were talking about before about, checking the liner notes, like, what label is this?
Yeah,
And then when the labels got a little bit too big, then, you start to pay attention to, well, who produced this?
that's it.
Or, the
Yeah.
members involved.
Yeah, and my big thing was the guys thanking other bands, right? Because it was like we
Oh,
went on,
fuck it.
right. So it was like we went on tour. We'd like to give a shout out to this band, or we'd like to give a shout out to this band, or thank this band for taking us on tour with them, or we can't wait to see you guys on the road again, right? And that
Yeah.
was always kind of like what I wrote down were who were those bands? Like who were these guys touring with? Who were they on stage with? Who were they? And then once because we didn't have the internet back then, so the only way to find music was through the magazines, right? You'd buy Metal Blade, you'd buy The Pit, you'd buy Kerrang, you'd buy all these different magazines, and you would try to go to the music section in the back and find it and see if you could actually get it because there were no record stores at the time were FYE, right? And they weren't carrying anything that wasn't mainstream. So you
Yeah.
couldn't find it unless you went to one of those obscure magazines and looked at the for sale stuff in the back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, a little bit of a fun thing is one of the bands that I was in, because everybody did that in the releases. Like if it was just a small demo tape that you did. So
Mm-hmm.
the a band that I was in, we deliberately took that to an extreme. So the entire back of like a um, letter-sized insert, if you will,
Yeah.
into our demo tape. In the smallest font we could possibly get, we listed every band that we liked. And so it's like, 400 bands
Right.
or something like that on the back of like
Yeah.
the song listing or whatever. Like, so we took it to an extreme just to make fun of that. But it was very helpful.
Yeah.
I agree.
So another cool thing was I don't know if you guys had this growing up in Sweden, but in the United States, you would buy a magazine. It was called The Pit, and it would come shrink wrapped, so you couldn't see what was in it. But the reason they shrunk wrap it was because every magazine had one CD in it, and it was a like
Mm.
8 or 9 different bands that were listed in the magazine. So let's say, for example, you buy The Pit and it had a cover of Cradle of Filth, right? Well, you knew in that CD one of the songs was going to be by Cradle of Filth. Then it could have had other black metal bands. It could have had goth. It could have had trance. It could have had whatever was in it. But you never knew. But it would come shrink wrapped, so you couldn't leaf through the magazine to see it. You bought it shrink wrapped for $4.99, and you got one CD in it. And every month they would put out a CD that had different bands from different labels that were in the pit, and they had articles about these bands. So that was a great way to find new bands and listen to new music because you would put the CD on and then you rifle through the book, through the magazine, and it was kind of cool. And
That's really cool. When was this? Around
this
what
would have
year?
been probably 1991 to about maybe 96 or 97, like that CD era.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you had Metal Edge was like the number one, right? Metal Edge was sold everywhere. That was like the number one magazine. Kerrang was kind of like hard rock, glam rock, punk,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So
yeah.
you had Kerrang, and then you basically had the Pit was like your hardcore, your black metal bands, your death metal bands. They weren't making. Some of them would make Metal Edge if they were more mainstream, but the Pit was way underground, and that was what you bought to
Yeah,
to buy it.
yeah. Because the fanzine that me and my buddies did, I mean, we were more in the vein of Maximum Rock and Roll, that sort of thing. Like there
Yeah,
was more punk hardcore type stuff. But in Maximum Rock and Roll, I don't think that they ever did included CDs or whatever, right? But it turned into a thing that the bigger there were some fanzines in Sweden that actually grew to be fairly large and actually went to real printers to get their
yeah,
zines done, as opposed to just going to the local copying shop. Um, and there was there was one magazine called Close Up
Okay.
that was huge, and I think that that's also an underrated
Yeah.
source for a lot of Scandinavian death
Right.
metal fame
So
because
this is what it looked like when you bought it.
oh
So
nice.
it would list all the bands on there, and then it would tell you what they were, and it would give you a free CD.
Yeah,
And that was kind of how it was. And then they got to the point where people were stealing the CDs without buying the magazine, so they started shrink wrapping them. And that was how
gotcha.
you got it. And then that was it. And then you would literally you'd buy the magazine shrink wrapped because you couldn't tell what was in it, and then they would have a CD in there, and you'd listen to it, and it was kind of
Yeah. But what's sort of happening in the fanzine scene for a while there? So Close Up, they had a CD because they were big enough to be able to do
mm-hmm.
a CD to go with the magazine. That's when I first heard Strapping Young Lad, for example. I
Yeah,
think that was on the very first CD that they ever included with one of the copies of the magazine was Strapping Young Lad. Nobody knew who they were or whatever, right?
mm-hmm.
But that was so we kind of picked up that too. We couldn't include cassettes or whatever,
Right,
but we what we did was that we got so many freaking demos to review, and it took up. That's one of the reasons why I quit, because it was like 90% of my day ended up being listening
right,
to demo tapes that people sent to us.
sure,
And because we were DIY and supportive of the scene, it was like, if you send us a demo tape, we'll send you a free copy of the fanzine.
mm-hmm.
And then it ends up like, well, we get 150 demo tapes that we'll send for free. So
Right,
it's not just the cost of printing of the fanzine, but it's also,
mm-hmm.
the freaking stamp. Because it was
Right,
mail, we had to put
yeah,
stamps on these things, so we had to spend time listening to
yeah,
the demo, review it, and then go to the post office also to mail these
mm-hmm.
things. Anyway, it was a huge hassle, but
Yeah,
what we ended up doing also was to put together a compilation tape, a cassette of
yeah,
here are the sort of the top 20 songs of all the demos that we got for the last issue.
mm-hmm.
Let's make a compilation thing. So it was part of contributing to the scene
Right,
too. Like, what are the best of the best, and yeah, we that helped us also. A little bit of
yeah,
a profit, but it was really just to be able to
right,
make it feel worthwhile for us to spend the time and money
sure,
just to distribute things.
yeah,
But so it's a double-edged sword. It's great to push that shit out. A lot of fucking work.
right,
But it was a whole lot more work then than there is now. Let me
yeah,
tell you.
sure,
Like now I can just go live and press play on tape, and people will show up and play my
mm-hmm.
song now instantly, and
Right,
that's great. That's so much better than having to. Me and my wife we're talking about also, because we've been pushing our singles. She's coming out with a single coming out
mm-hmm.
in a few weeks. So we're like, pushing trying to get our shit noticed by people.
Sure,
And it's a lot of places to send to.
yeah,
But at least now we can get a
right,
catalog online, and we can send emails, and we can send links. And she was saying, like, imagine if we had to do this again like we did in the 90s. Like
tough,
we would have to make a cassette or a CD or
mm-hmm.
whatever, and we would have to write it, print it out, write the addresses manually for each envelope, and send it out, and pay for the postage, and fucking hell. So
yeah, terrible,
it another tangent. When I was young, it was uphill both ways,
yeah,
and it was a snowstorm every time. No, but I mean, it's really a good time now compared to what it used to
sure,
be, to be able
and
to promote yourself. And
right, and imagine, right, you'd have to actually go out and play shows because you'd want people to come, and then you'd want them entice them to give your stuff to all their friends, and hopefully you met somebody at the show that said, "Hey, I know somebody who has studio space or is looking for a band to sign," or and you kind of get lucky
Yeah,
that way, and you would have to write letters, right? Now it's as simple as finding an email, right? You can shoot somebody a message like this.
yeah, and I mean, I think also when it comes to the live shows, they matter a whole lot more now than they did back in the day, because back in the day it was people that knew who you were, but they couldn't really spread the word. The people that were there, they didn't have the cell phones or the Facebooks or whatever to post those notes on for people to just randomly catch up on it, right? you know Playing live was kind of an end game. It was like, that was the end point of, it wasn't a stepping stone for anything. Very, like, if anything, it was like you could impress the promoter to want to rehire you to play at that same venue, or maybe if they had some ends to play at a different bigger venue later on. But playing live in those days was not a jumping off point. But it definitely is now. Like, now when you play live, you're hoping that even if it's just 4 people there, that you put on such a fucking awesome show that whatever they post online on their Instagram accounts will go viral, and then the next show will have 200. So obviously that did not exist then. It was like, if you had 60 people there, those were the 60 people that were going to go there, and maybe you could get 3 of their friends to the next
all their money in the advertising, right? Because you'd have to go to Kinko's and make 1,000 flyers to put them out, because the only way to get people to your show was going around and stapling them to corkboards or tying them on totem poles, hanging them in bus stops.
I was just going to say that too, and hope that the cops wouldn't find out who you were, so they could come and fine you for it. So you would go minus just from the fines of stapling your things on things you shouldn't staple them on, because who gave a shit? I don't give a shit if I'm not allowed to.
I remember one of my buddies had a band when we were in high school, and his trick was they typed out flyers, and they went and put 35 cents to buy a newspaper, and on the inside of every newspaper they would stick their flyer, and they would close the machine back. So somebody would buy the newspaper and they open it up, at the second page, their flyer is right there.
Yeah.
That was kind of.
But at the end of the day, like, it's always that creativity that wins.
Yeah, sure.
Because if someone has never found a flyer in their newspaper before, they might, pay a little bit more attention to it. As opposed to like just a TikTok post.
Obviously, that didn't pay off because they never made it anywhere. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
But it was fun doing it.
Yeah. No, totally. Like, in the 90s, it was definitely an explosion of bands and an explosion of gigs, and the youth clubs saw traffic to their venues more than anything else. So there was a lot of illegal activity going on there, but it was also a very thriving cultural thing.
It was fun, right?
Weigh the pluses versus the minuses, and it was definitely a plus. And I think that is also why we see the Sabatons and the Ghosts and the massive Scandinavian influence on metal, is because what happened then. It was fun, it was free, it was good-hearted, no harm intended.
No, never was.
So here we are.
So I think what we should do then is, on May 18th, on that Sunday when we got nothing going on, we'll go there and we'll go live together from the show. We'll show everybody around. We'll kind of give everybody a glimpse of what's going on. And then going into that week, let's just start putting out stuff on this and see if anybody local wants to meet us. Maybe we can at Countryside.
I think that's a great idea. And my wife, Hexa, if anyone would ever hear Hexa, is interested in going as well. So that would be a third one. The the minus point is that her son has his graduation on the 17th,
Okay.
which we are going to follow by going to a show that night, Underworld at Radius. So
Okay.
the 18th, we might be a little bit groggy,
Yeah,
but
or we can make it later, right? We don't have to get there right when they open. We can.
I'm sure I'll be there. We'll see if Heather will be there,
Sure.
but it'll be a good time, and
Right.
I will watch my savings and make sure that I have a little bit more of an economy to
We'll
to do something exciting there.
Because walking around there, obviously, you can spend hours and hours there and not see everything, right? I think I circled the place 3 or 4 times, and every time I'd walk by, something else would like stick out, and I'd be like, "Oh, I didn't see that." 20 more minutes leafing through records, and then another hour goes by, and then another hour goes by, and then you realize you've been there for 3 hours. And
I'm going to tell you this, and I know we're trying to wrap up, but the number one tip of going to the record fair is to not buy anything for the first half hour at least. Keep your wallet in your pocket for at least half an hour. Go check things out. The first thing you see is probably not going to be the best bargain you find.
No, I agree.
So, but let's do that. But we have a few more of these going on before we get there. So,
we got. I mean, it's in May, so obviously we'll have next week's show, which we got to talk about these guys. If you've heard the news.
Oh, the Kiss, yeah.
Did you read about it?
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow because it's a cash grab, and they retired as Kiss, but now they're doing the unmasked Kiss
because they're even too tired to put all their fucking makeup now. So it's no, I've given up on. I've never seen them live, and I'm never going to. Because they've lost me, right? I love their '70s shit. They're that legend to me. I love '70s Kiss. I'm gonna stick to that, but I'm not gonna. I don't give a shit about what they're doing right now.
It's tough because that they made the announcement after Gene Simmons' tour fell flat on its face, and I don't know if you heard what they were doing, but Gene Simmons for $12,000. You could be his roadie for the day. So you get to hang out with him, see all the equipment, see all this stuff, and nobody bought it. Nobody spent $12,000 to be
no fucking shit. I'm gonna pay $12,000 to be your fucking slave for a day? Are you fucking kidding me?
That was what he promoted, and it didn't work. So
of course not.
He had
That's a stupid idea.
1 month of like really bad ticket sales and touring. And then he had another month of only selling like a small percentage of the total venue of tickets. And he realized it was costing him more money to do these shows than he was making back. So he canceled the tour. And within 1 week, he announced that Kiss was going to be reunited unmasked. And now they're doing this giant unmasked tour because it's technically still Kiss, but not Kiss. And that's how they're going to make all their money back.
Such a douche. I'm sorry. He's an ass.
So but that's what happened. His own tour basically fell apart, and I think what really hurt the most is that Ace Frehley's on tour and he's selling out everywhere he goes. And I think that crushed Gene because his tour tanked and Ace's tour is successful.
Yeah.
So ego and pride took precedence. He got the boys back together and he said, "We're going to do this unmasked." Paul and Eric Carr said yes, and then they got Tommy Thayer to come back. And then this is the first time Tommy Thayer will be in Kiss without the Ace makeup. So it'll just be him.
Eric Carr died a long time.
Or not Eric Carr, Eric Singer.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we've learned since '93 never take Kiss for their word when it's going to be their
Sure.
final tour. So
Right.
they've been saying that for
So
35
they're
years.
back, not in
So
the paint. Right. It,
let's not trust Kiss anymore.
yeah, it's just four dudes playing now. They're not in makeup. They're doing the unmasked. But because of the poor ticket sales, Gene had to recoup this, and he got the boys back and said, "Can you help me out?" And like I said, he is definitely competing with Ace right now because Ace's tour is on fire. Everyone is going to see him, and no one wants to see Gene.
And Ace is laughing his ass off
He is
because
getting the
of
last laugh.
the snubs when they were going to do their final tour, but they didn't want an Ace on there because they were going to sound like Piss and not Kiss and all that shit. And Ace was like, "I've sold more fucking records than
Right.
you have for you've
Yeah.
lived off this stuff when I was with the band, and since I left the band, you have made less money on your records
Yeah.
than I have with mine." And that ticked Gene off, and it's been true ever since.
Yeah. So now,
But I don't give a shit. to
right.
be
So this is
honest.
where they're at
I'm
now.
just-
So
I wish I would have seen Kiss in 1977.
Yeah.
I didn't, and I'm just gonna have to live with that.
right. So it's kind of interesting because I want to let it stew and see what the fan reaction is because there are very old school Kiss fans that are not happy that they're doing this. But then there are just Kiss fans that are glad to see the four of them back together because they're not going to play just the unmasked stuff. They're going to play everything like they always do. And it's going to be a huge cash grab. And then people are saying this is the precursor to them putting the paint back on and doing another reunion tour. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so they're gonna play Unholy, and they're gonna play Heaven's
Lick
on
It Up
Fire
and
and
all-
that shit.
yeah, yeah.
After they lick it up and all
Right.
that,
So
all that shit that they released after.
all the unmasked stuff, yeah.
Uh,
From Animalize all the way up and through the
Lick It Up was the first unmasked one, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Unmasked as an album is really not that terrible, but they were still masked when they did it.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
just,
So,
oh man, yeah. Duality of things. It's
Right,
like the
right.
Ramones.
Yeah,
They were really cool when you thought they were punk rockers, and it turns out that they were a corporation after all.
yeah.
And same thing with Kiss. It's like
Very
they were
smart.
really
Ramones
cool
very,
as-
very
as-
smart.
Yeah,
Did it right.
yeah.
A lot of bands took that attitude and they took Kiss's attitude too, right? Made it business.
Yeah,
You know, it is what it is, right? Bands are successful because they followed that module.
and I think that ties back to I don't want to wrap up, but it ties that back to a lot of what we've been talking about when bands lose their core deep fans from the beginning
Mhm.
is when they turn from being a band to being a corporation, and that's when they lose
Yeah.
their audience and their the dedication. Doesn't mean that they lose their money,
No,
but they lose their core audience that got them to where they are,
Yeah.
and they turn into corporations.
that's true.
So there we are.
All right, back full
All
circle
right,
again.
I feel like I'm at an end point right
Yeah,
now, but
we'll wrap
is
things
great
up.
great as always, and
Yeah, and we'll do this next Thursday, and we'll talk more about the Kiss thing. We'll let it stew for a little bit and kind of get our ideas put out there and see what else happens in the world of hard rock and heavy metal. I know you mentioned Ghost earlier. They have a new version of the Papa thing now. We took a different thing, so Tobias went a different route.
Yes.
Supposedly, they're moving more into the black metal now in terms of their sound. I guess the next iteration is going to be more heavy again. So every time they do a new Pope style, they change their music. If you've noticed this one now, it's all black. So he's black paint, black on black, black outfits, sparkles, and they're doing more of a black metal sounding thing. Tiff, what's up?
I've heard some things about their lore too, that there might be a few changes to that whole lore thing.
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah. So
Speaking of Kiss too, I'm working. I did make a God of Thunder cover for a friend's engagement party a while ago, so
okay.
I might have that as an ad hoc drop.
Let's do it.
That will be unpromoted and just drop a God of Thunder
Yeah.
there because I have it recorded. I just need to clean it up a little bit. So
Sounds good. Let's
exclusive
hear
announcement,
it.
yes,
Awesome.
to all two people that are here.
Right.
Anyway, we'll see where that happens. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about that stuff next week. That sounds
Yeah,
like a
sounds
good thing.
good. So we'll wrap up there. So as always, guys, thanks for hanging out, being a part of this. Follow Kelly, follow his new track. He's linked it up everywhere. So support
Thank you.
Arsenic, and we'll see you guys next week, and we'll start dropping hints. And if there's anything you guys want us to talk about, let us know. We'll bring it up.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Later, guys. Take care. Have a good night. Enjoy your week, and we'll see you next Thursday. Bye, everybody.
See you. Cheers.